So thank you for coming to the Inventors Association of Manhattan. I see a bunch of new faces. Thank you for coming. We are a New York State not-for-profit dedicated to helping inventors, startups, and entrepreneurs learn how to be a little smarter about taking ideas through to hopefully money-making businesses. And we do that by having these monthly meetings with great speakers about topics that are of interest to you, we hope. And some months we also have pitching panel, which is an opportunity for new companies to present, kind of like a Shark Tank without the money or the drama or the billionaire egos. We don't have that tonight, but we will next month, I promise. So we have professional members who support the organization, and two of which, is there anyone here that is, no. Lewis, who is our speaker, and Gordon Perry. Gordon, would you like to speak for a moment?
Gordon Randall Perry, that's me, and I work with you guys, inventors. I love working with you. My job is to take your ideas, help them become a reality. My fees are reasonable. I encourage you to give me a call. Thank you.
And by the way, my name is Bruce Zutler. I'm the president of the association. I also operate a business called MCI Products Group, which helps companies figure out intelligent pathways to commercialization. So our topic tonight is about how to write, finding the inventive concept of your idea. And it really is something that I think is very, very important. We probably should have it in one way, shape, or form every month. And it's really the important thing about patents. So a patent, and what is a patent? And Lewis is going to talk about that. And one of the things I hear a lot is, do I have to patent my product? Or can I go at it without a patent? That's almost an entirely different discussion. But if you do create a patent, what's in the patent is what's important. Just having a certificate on the wall doesn't mean you necessarily have something that'll help you in the long term. It may not, but that's why Lewis is here to talk about it. And Lewis is also our host here at Troutman Sanders. So I think it's really great that we finish the year having Lewis not just be our host, but also educate us. So with that, thank you, Lewis.
Good evening. I've been sitting in these lectures now for a year, and I thought I'd share how I got to this lecture. I was asked to guest lecture a law school class at Fordham for budding patent attorneys who are not even past the bar yet. And I had to give them a whole talk about essentially this, how to find the inventive concept when a client walks in the door. And one of the tips I give them is never let the client lead you astray. The inventor's always all over the place, yada yada. And I gave that song and dance to all these lawyers to be. And that night I came and sat at this lecture and I said, I have a room full of 40 people who I should tell the same thing to, right? If I'm telling the attorneys you have to watch what your inventor is telling you and figure out how to boil it down, well, the inventors are smart people. They can figure this out for themselves as well. They just need the same kind of guidance. So that's what I'm hoping to sort of convey here, is to figure out, for you to figure out, how to boil what's rolling around in your head, what some of you may have been living with for years trying to get out in some form or another, whether it be onto a patent, whether it be out to a company, however it's going to be, how to crystallize that, how to boil it down so you can get the best out of it. And it may be that you need a patent, it may be that you don't, and it may be that you need help, professionally or otherwise, with these things, or not. But until you know what you have, you can't get any of that. So that's where we're going to go. So these are some of the things. We're going to try and talk about patentable concepts, tips with the patenting process, tips for dealing with the patent office, and understanding foreign filings to a certain extent. As a way of background, I've been in this business close to 15 years. I've written hundreds of patents. I've serviced clients large and small, from the ex-president of the IAM, which is Patrick Raymond, who is a single inventor, all the way up to multinational corporations. So I sort of have the perspective of where all of you are coming from, and A, how to get you to talk to a big multinational corporation, and B, when you're in the corporation seat, what I'm looking for, looking down for somebody who may want to sell us something. So let's start with a quick quiz. How many people have looked and read at a patent? Okay, good. So these parts are going to go quick. There's a spec, which is the 1,000 words to describe your pictures. There are, of course, the drawings. 99% of you are going to need drawings, by the way. Don't think you don't. And lastly, the claim. Those are those long run-on sentences that are at the very back of the patent. Just so you know, a claim is the legal definition of what you can protect. So that's where the money is. I tell my clients all the time, you want to save money, you want to do your own drawings, do your own drawing. You want to write your own spec, write your own spec. That's what you pay a patent attorney for. Or go see a patent attorney, have a conversation with them, and understand what that run-on sentence really should mean and get around to it. We're going to talk about that and ways that you can help yourself to get to a claim.
So an English teacher would not be a good patent attorney?
No,
Okay.
no. Though we are
The
allowed
run-on
to,
sentence part of it?
Yes.
Okay.
and we are allowed to be our own, the fancy term is like a lexicographer. We can make up our own words, which is also half the fun. So every so often you'll read some of these things and go, what word is that? And you go, well, your patent attorney got paid an extra hour to make up that word. So let's start with what's an invention. Okay, we all think we know what an invention is, but really what is it? Well, Webster describes it as a discovery, a finding. That's easy enough. The last two, USC 101 and Congress and the Supreme Court, are sort of the legal definitions. There's a nice broad one at the bottom. Anything under the sun made by man, or woman, I guess. There are some caveats to that when you start getting to the very sophisticated end of the sciences. But for the most part, most of the stuff that you guys got running around in your head, these ideas that you want to get out, are patentable inventions in hopefully one form or another. What is it not? It's not an abstract idea, right? Oh, it'd be great if we could do anti-gravity. No, not going to happen, right? A law of nature, you can't patent gravity. That's what it is, a law of nature. Physical phenomenon, lightning. I want to patent lightning. Nope, you can't. Maybe you have a novel idea to make lightning in a bottle. We can talk about whether or not that's patentable. But the general concept, not getting a patent for. What must it be to get a patent? The magic terms we like to use are new and unobvious, or novel, and having some form of inventive step. The basics are nobody has done it in its entirety. That's new. So I've invented something, and Gordon hasn't invented the exact same thing. That's new. What's obvious? Well, it's a little trickier, a little slippier. What I spend a lot of my days trying to fight off from the patent office is 3 or 4 different elements in your invention, 3 or 4 different patents, and the patent examiner says, well, the obvious, you can take A from here, B from here, C from here, and we have your invention. So it's obvious. Somebody could have sat down and thought about it if they really gave it some thought. Sorry, you don't get an invention. There are ways to beat that back, but that's the trickier part of the day. So, what's the invention? You all think you have an invention, you all think you have an idea. But what was it? What is it really? The basics, and this is the basics I tell the law students, the basics I'll tell you. Understand the big picture to the invention. What is it? What's the problem? What's your real problem being solved? Sometimes you think about your problem a little too narrowly. It's this. Somebody does this, it's a problem. Well, maybe that problem's a little more global. Okay. What's the solution? How are you solving the problem? I know it sounds a little ridiculous, but sometimes to phrase it and think about it and maybe even write it down will help you get some clarity around it. Avoid the embodiment trap. Everybody who has a formed invention in their head has thought of a way to do it. I take this, I take this, I take this, I screw them together, and I got it, right? But that just may be an embodiment. There may be other ways to do it. Maybe what you're dancing around is bigger than the thing you built, or the thing that's floating around in your head. We're going to do a concrete example with some high-tech subject matter, so we can, Bruce knows what it is, that's why he's laughing. So we can get our hands around what this is, but you need to sort of step back and figure out more than what you have. I tell clients all the time, I've done the base level of my job if I can protect your commercial product. I've done more if I can produce more than that. If I can capture enough subject matter space to not only capture what you're going to do, but what your competitor might do, what a design around might be, what a pirate might do. These are things you need to think about beforehand, because that helps frame your invention, helps frame your concept. And this is usually, don't let the inventors lead you astray. But don't let others lead you astray. You may talk to other people, family members, friends, me even, Gordon, and we may think we know what your invention is, but if we're not getting it right, you need to correct us. You need to, it's your baby. You've been living with it longer than everybody else and anybody else. So you should really get your hands around it, understand it, and be able to articulate it. So a problem solution statement is sort of a way to do it. A couple of sentences. What's the problem? Here's an invention that I've written up a patent for in the last couple of months. Problem is, people don't know how to tell the weather, right? We don't know. There's meteorologists, there's these models, but they're all slipshod. So the solution, I have a client who figured out how to do it with some satellite technology. It's really interesting stuff, right? But you have to think a little bigger than that, because who's he going to sell it to? Farmers? Well, farmers may be interested in it. What about a hedge fund? What about a commodities trader? Guys who make their money buying and selling #2 corn, or soft white wheat, or pork bellies, right? They may be the guys, the gals, the people you want to talk to. So don't think about your embodiment, oh, I've got this great thing for the farmers. It may be bigger than that. Think about your invention. The invention is telling the weather, right? And if I can figure that out, who's going to be interested in it? How should I think about the invention? What's the concept? How do I want to write this out? How do I want to tell other people about it so I can capture that? And maybe I have crafted discussions, so I have a little talk with the farming community and I have my pitch for them and my concept for them. And maybe I have a different one for the commodities guys. But the overarching invention isn't a way to help farmers grow their crops, right? It's a way to tell the weather. And that's important because it gets you bigger than what you've got in your basement, what you've got rattling around in your head, and that helps you define your invention. So how do you do it? How do you get down to the nitty-gritty? It's great, Lou, thanks for all this great pie in the sky type stuff, but how do I do it? Well, you do it almost like writing a claim, but it's a little easier than that. Write it all down. Write down the elements. It requires a satellite. It requires a radio transmission. It requires a network. It requires an OR lock. It requires an OR. It requires this. It requires that. Okay? Then start crossing things out. What's known? Well, okay, satellites are known. Scratch. Right? Internet's known. Scratch. Radio transmissions. Scratch. The secret sauce is something else. What I call the inventive concept. Sometimes I say the word secret sauce. That's what I mean. But boil it down. Work through it. Because hopefully what's left, which you haven't crossed out, is really your invention. And you may be surprised that what's left may not be what you really thought it was. But that's what it is. Because that's what you haven't found out there. Right? That's whether you've done your own search, whether you've thought about it. Clients tell me, I've been in the business 20 years. I know what's out there. Okay? Well, then tell me what's new. Because that's what I have to focus on. That's what you have to focus on. You have to focus on for many reasons. A, if you want to engage a patent attorney to get the most bang for your buck. B, you want to engage a corporation and ask them to sell your product or make your product. You want to engage Gordon so he knows what to do. You want to engage Bruce so he knows how to source it. These are all reasons for you to get your hands around it, because then you'll get the most value when you go to service providers. So, is there more than one thing left? Maybe you got 3 or 4 things left. Do they have to work together? Could they work apart? Maybe I've skinned this cat 2 or 3 different ways and I don't know it. The opposite is the other true, right? Either I've got nothing, maybe I have nothing, oops. Or I've got too much. And maybe my invention is bigger than I think and I can break it down into different pieces and different components. And maybe there's a different invention one way, a different invention another way. Maybe there are different markets for those things. The other tip I give my clients, we've done all of that. We sat down, we write a specification, we write the claims. I hand the claim to the inventor and I say, steal it. You now work for your worst competitor, tell me how you would design around it. Oh, I never think about it that way. Well, your competitor is. Whoever it is, whether you're a solo inventor, whether you're Rubbermaid, whether you're Honeywell, it doesn't matter. You have a competitor. Think about it. Because if we can cover that as well, now we're getting somewhere. Now we have more than your invention. We have what other people's inventions may be. We've got other solutions to the problem that seem to feel like our stuff. I always tell people it's sort of a litmus test. If you walked into a Bed Bath & Beyond and saw that product, not yours, hanging on the shelf, would you be picking up the phone and yelling at your patent attorney that I didn't do a good job? And if the answer is yes, that would really fire me up. If I saw that hanging on the shelf and it wasn't mine and I had a patent and we didn't cover it, I'd be really mad at you. Well, good. Then that means we need to loop that into the concept. We need to wrap it in. Maybe we can, maybe we can't, but we need to have that discussion to understand the meats and bounds. You can have this discussion with yourself. I'm a sounding board half the time, right? I'm not an inventor, just an attorney. I'm steeped in technology, this is all I do all day. But I'm no smarter in what you guys are doing than you are, right? So you can have this conversation with yourself if you know the questions to ask. And these are some of the questions to ask. These are some of the ways to do it. That's what I tell my first years to do. Okay? When a client walks in, this is how we're going to do it. Because you've got to get your hands around it. So here's the high tech. Paper clips. I figured it's nice and easy, everyone can figure it out. Everyone has seen a gem clip, right? Anybody's got a piece of paper on them with a paper clip on it, a gem is what it looks like. Gem didn't come out full form, right? That wasn't, it invented itself. Some people tried ahead of time. So we're really going to talk about this guy, the conical. Because he had it. He was close. He was on third base. But he didn't step outside far enough to get him all the way to home. You'll see when we talk about his claims and his patent, even though he's not a gem clip, if he had changed a few words, he could have maybe, either A, could have figured out the gem clip, or B, could have taken the guy to the cleaners. And trust me, anybody in the room would like even 1,000th of a cent on every paper clip sold in the United States. Forget about the world, right? So his magic you're going to see is going to fall out in that middle piece. Oh, wrong way. So he did the same thing we talked about. Now, granted, this is high-tech 1890. How did he describe his invention? So in this regard, he did a good job. It's a binder, fastening pieces of paper, rapidly, cheaply made out of spring wire. We all get that, right? Very convenient, can engage a number of sheets of paper, and of course, we can disengage it at will. Very fancy terms for it comes in and off and doesn't do anything to the paper otherwise. But this was his thought. Back in 1890, they were just figuring out how to draw wire and get spring wire into the forms they wanted. Paper clips and paper fastening was a problem. Does anybody know how they used to fasten paper before paper clips and staples? Anybody know what a paper staple looks like? They used to fold the corner over and then tear a tab in it and fold it back. So you could get a couple of pieces of paper together, but you've destroyed at least the upper left-hand corner. So they're motivated to find a different way to do it. Now remember, he's got it right because he's talking about engagement and disengagement because it's slightly different than a staple. Right? If you think about this as a staple, it's still spring wire, it's still bent, it's still formed, it still engages a number of sheets of paper, but it can't disengage, or at least disengage easily, right? Because it's a binding fastening. This is a paper clip. So the problem solution he sort of has, right? He understands the problem. People need to hold paper together without destroying it, and they'd like to be able to disengage it. But he loses it in the details. So here's his claim. Pretty good claim, actually. And this would be what your elements look like, right? If you had to write the elements for paperclip, you've never seen a paperclip before, then start writing them down, just like I asked you to, for honing it down. A clip or fastener of a single length of wire bent to form a frame. That's a gem clip, right? That's the beginning of one. It's the outside loop. An end portion of the wire deflected inward, all right, we're all good, near one end of the frame and extended longitudinally along. Now, if we stop there, we've got it, right? Because remember, what makes a gem clip, or a paper clip, what makes the magic is that it does this, right? It's got the inside prongs, it's got the outside prongs, They force against each other, and it's that tension that compresses the paper in between it and holds it together. Okay? But he's got this within the middle of the device. Okay? So you never want to say something like middle unless you really have to. Perfect example is I had a client, they were stitching two pieces of fabric together. The patent claim said stitch down the midline. I went to the client and said, do you have to stitch it down the midline? He says, no, I can put two separate stitches. Very little cost differential, if none, and it'll be the same product. That's out. He's not infringing the patent anymore. Wasn't stitched down the middle. Okay? So he says middle. Do you want to say middle? Maybe you have to when you're thinking about your invention. But this is why you go through and start crossing elements off, right? Okay, I've seen a single length of wire, right? Because there were paper clips before this guy. We've seen them slightly deflected. All right, okay. Oh, but longitudinally along the device on the inside, that really hadn't been seen before. But he gets himself in trouble now within the middle. Maybe we could forgive him. But then he goes, formed corrugated and terminating in an eye. He's about done now, right? That is a picture of this in words, okay? Has anybody used a paperclip that looks like this? No, you haven't. So he had the idea, right? I gotta fasten paper together, it's gotta be, but he didn't think this, right? He didn't think, oh, it's gotta be the fourth. I've got this one prong. And you can understand why that would be better than the straight one. The corrugations give you a little more surface area. You can hold on to the paper better. But did he really have to have it corrugated? Did he have to have it terminating in an eye? I don't know. I wasn't there in 1900 doing the prosecution. But I don't think he did. I mean, when you look at some of the prior art in the area, he didn't have to. But he probably went to his patent attorney after thinking about this. Said, dude, I have this great idea.
Did they say dude back then?
I don't think they said. He said, forsooth.
Okay.
And he handed him his idea, and his patent attorney just wrote it down. And he didn't go to his attorney, or maybe he did, his attorney botched it. Well, hope his attorney didn't botch it, he's a professional. And he wrote what he saw, he wrote the embodiment. But the embodiment wasn't the real invention. He thought it was, but he sort of missed the boat a little bit. Sorry.
It strikes me that that actually has other uses than paperclip, that the gem would not, and one of them is holding fabric. And I wonder if, there's some repurposing possible with inventions and where that comes in, and who advises on that, and so on.
Well, A, you're thinking outside the box, so you're thinking big. So
Outside the screen.
Right. For repurposing an invention, you could not patent what you have seen, right? I can't get you a patent to a clip with a corrugated middle with an eye, no matter what it's going to fasten. Okay? But there may be ways you may be using it that we could discuss. It's a little tricky because you can't patent what came before, even though it's in and out already. Like that patent is expired.
No, my point was simply, when you write the patent, you have to call it a paperclip as opposed to a fastener or...
You do that.
Right?
You're getting 2 points. Yes.
How much is that worth?
Right. Here, only a business card. Or free glass of wine. You're absolutely right. You need to think about it outside the paperclip. And you're absolutely right. We should have been discussing this as a fastener or a clip, and not necessarily a paperclip. Because now, again, you're limiting it down, right? It may be better, and you don't even know it may be better for fabric, right? Because it may be that you can, because you've got the eye, you can put a needle through it, and that'll help you hold it down, that'll help you for your first stitch, who knows what it is, right? So that's a perfect example of thinking outside the box. This guy thought he had the perfect paper invention, but maybe his real market for that clip was the fabric art. Maybe it was textiles.
So Louis, sorry to interrupt you, if the people at the time marketed that exact product but called it a fabric clip, would they be infringing his patent if Kona specifically talked about paper?
It would be tricky. It's what you're teaching people to do. Are there non-infringing uses, which may be, because he's talking about, let's go to the claim now, and see if he calls it a paper clip, right? Well, clip or paper fastener. So he may be able to get it under clip and get you. Okay. But if we took out the word clip and said paper fastener, there's bends back and forth on how much weight that holds. But the other side's patent attorneys, if there's money involved, will say, you're married to paper. Okay. So it does help in the first instance to think about this broader than just a paper fastener. You're absolutely right. The gentleman's turtleneck first, I'm sorry.
Oh, he actually asked a question, but it's a different claim, basically. He asked a question that I wasn't asking, actually.
Okay.
But had he just said, what about if he just said fastener, then you didn't even have to say clip or fastener, you could just say fastener constructed of a single length of wire, you didn't even need the rest of the stuff. Like, but had he said a paper fastener, all you could do is do the same thing, and it's a different claim, right? And then it's a new invention.
It's
I mean, it's not obvious per se.
there's a lot of hand waving around that because we have to sort of take a look and see what's going on. But yes, you're absolutely right. If we had just said fastener and we didn't say paper, now we can fasten anything, right? Doesn't even matter the size. This thing may be a perfect fastener for, shipping containers. Maybe something like that will pin 2 shipping containers together. Who knows? And if that's what it is, then it really wants to be a fastener. And you talk about paper. So you may get yourself in trouble as well.
Had you explained less, like you were originally saying, would it have been too little? Or could it be said, like, part A, form corrugated, blah, 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 part B, or part B in same ornamental direction of the outer, like, part of the clip? Like, could it be done like subclaims along with that?
Yes, there can be, this is what they call an independent claim. So it's the broadest one of the set. Okay? There are other claims that show up in a patent that are narrower. So they will take this one and focus it down. So the concept of, getting rid of the middle and the corrugated in the first claim, which is your broadest, and should be, would be great. And I can have a second claim that says, and the extension is formed corrugated and terminating in I. So I could capture somebody with the exact same embodiment as that. But I don't have to narrow my broadest claim to get there. I can put it down into a dependent claim. We're getting a little more sophisticated on patent claiming, which we can do later, because I think we're going to have time at the end, and I'm happy to do it. But I'm trying not to get in too deep into the weeds.
All right, you may not want to address this either, but what if you have 2 embodiments that are virtually identical but for completely different purposes? You may want to take that offline or whatever. I'm just curious.
Let's take that one at the end. Let's go through and then we'll take that one at the end. So don't forget it if you could.
But very generally, like the poll, the issues are, if you go too general, you can't make the claim because you're saying something too general and they won't accept it for that. But if you go too specific, then you're pigeonholing yourself and you're leaving yourself exposed.
That's right.
That's generally
That's where we are. So you said it better than me. So that's why you have to understand your invention. Because what is it? You sat there and you wrote the broad one. We took out middle, we took out corrugated.
I mean, then they wouldn't accept it in the
And then
first
they may not
place.
accept it because there may be a ton of art that is out there with a straight arm and no eye, and then I don't get a patent at all, right? But the flip side is maybe that's not there, and I've added corrugated and eye for no reason to the independent claim, to my broadest claim, to my invention. So that's why the exercise is sit down and think about it, because someone's going to have to, right? Either you're going to pay a patent attorney to think about it, or you have to think about it. And it's better for you to think about it, so when you go engage anybody, whether or not it's an attorney or PR or whatever it is, you can explain your invention in a concise, clear manner, and they understand what the secret sauce is to a certain extent. They understand what the concept and the solution are, and you can get it out quickly and smoothly and eloquently so people understand what's going on. And then you have an expectation, because you may have an expectation that I should be able to get any loop of spring wire that you can put on paper. But you really shouldn't, right? Because there's other things out there. I mean, people are still trying to paperclip thing. There are other embodiments of paperclips that people keep trying to throw in, and they're just these ugly messes of twisted wire. So, there's an expectation. I can't get a gem clip. I cannot patent a gem clip. No one in this room can, right? So don't have that expectation that, oh, well, I'm gonna get every gem clip out there. It's not gonna happen. Right? But whatever your narrow subset is, let's figure out what the broadest scope of that subset is and be able to address it and talk about it and write it into the patent application. Or even if you don't get a patent, be able to discuss it with another human being who you want help from or assistance from in an articulate way, so it comes across easy and you understand what's going on, and they understand what's going on pretty quickly. So how do you know that you got it? Right? So anybody who's in marketing or sales has heard of an elevator pitch. You're locked in an elevator and you've got 60 seconds to tell people what you want to tell them. Okay? So you need to practice this. You need to be able to explain the concept, and if you have a patent, you can talk about the secret sauce. If you don't have the patent, then you can't. And you need to be able to practice this. And I'm going to show you that you can do it, right? We'll do a paperclip example. I have the timer on my phone. So let's say I go on vacation, and lo and behold, the wire bending company is having their corporate retreat at the same hotel I picked for my vacation. And lo and behold, walking up the sidewalk, headed to the same elevator bank, is Miss Wirebender. And she's got her name tag on. It says Miss Wirebender, head of R&D, research, and new products. Fate has thrown me a bone. This is the person I need to speak to, right? But you hear her talk that she's checking out. So you know the only opportunity you're going to have is in this elevator, going from whatever floor we're on to whatever floor we're going to. So you need to be able to convey your invention in the shortest amount of time possible to get it done. So let's do it. I'll set the timer. Hi, my name is DelJuidice. Nice to meet you, Miss Wirebender. I have this great idea for a brand new paperclip. It's made out of spring steel, just what you guys do. It's strong, it's resilient, can be made very cheaply, holds more paper than any other fastener you can find. Take it on, take it off, no problems, no issues. Greatest thing you'll ever see. I did that in 17 seconds. Okay? Yes, I practiced, but so should you. Okay? Because it's your invention. How many times, and this is not making fun of anybody in the room, because at all times somebody's done it. Hi, how are you? Good, how are you? Oh, I had this great idea. You see, I was asleep on the couch, and I had a pile of papers on my chest, and I fell off the couch. My wife hit me with a frying pan, and when I woke up, I had the idea for a comic clip. Right? If you say that in the 60 seconds that you have with this woman in the elevator, the most impression you're going to leave her with is that you have marital problems. Right? That's not the impression you want to leave her with. You want to leave her with something that she's going to want to say, you know, that sounds great. That's what my company does. Maybe we should talk about this. I'm going right now, but here's my card. Call me in a week. Which, of course, you'll only wait 2 days, and you'll still call her, right? Because we're all chomping at the bit. But at least you've got an introduction. You've got her interested. Right? And you can do it with the secret sauce. Let's say I had the patent application on file. And you know what? It's all about this. It's all about this force. I've got a patent on it. We've got this thing because you've got these extra times. It compresses the paper in between. Take it on, take it off. No damage whatsoever. But I'd love to talk to you about it. How about if I send you my patent application and we can have a longer conversation? 33 seconds. Okay? It's not easy, but it's not hard. You have to practice. Patrick walked in, so I'm going to pick on him. So I'm going to do, you think, well, that's a paperclip, Lou. What's a paperclip? We all know what a paperclip is. So I'll do the curving, if anybody knows Patrick's product. Hi, my name is Patrick Raymond. Nice to meet you, Mr. and Mrs. Bed Bath & Beyond. I have a great product for you. You know when you're in the shower and you get mugged by your shower curtain? I figured out a way to solve that. Retrofits onto any shower with a curtain, no tools, no fuss, no muss. Anyone can do it, and not only do you get more space in your shower, but it prevents leaks because it pushes the curtain against the tub, and it's great. This is the best product you'll ever see, and I'd love to talk to you about it. 25 seconds. Okay? You're hired. Thanks. I can do Rick's invention for the Orlocks. It's not, I do this for a living, so it's easy for me to do it. But these are your inventions, and you need to be able to do this. Because you need to be able to sell your product. Nobody wants to know, you know, the whole point about you getting hit over the head is great at the end of the conversation. That's a great funny story to tell somebody. But it's not the way you want to start. Especially if you're engaging someone who you're going to hire and spend money on of your limited budget to figure out what's going on. It's cheaper and more efficient for you to figure it out before you come to any of us. And then we're focused. We know what it is, and we can help you farther from there. The farther down the road you walk, the farther we can take you after the fact. And remember, don't talk about the novelty. And you see, I was able to do the first one without talking about the real invention. And you got to practice both. Because you can't go up to somebody and say, and this happens all the time again, "Hi, I've got this great invention. I can't tell you about it. But let's just pretend that we all know about it. And what would you do about it?" Okay, well, you just asked me about 12 general questions in there. And the only thing I can give you is general help. You know, if you'd like specific help, you need a little bit more specificity. And until you've practiced this, it's hard for you to get that specificity. It's hard for someone to figure out how they can give you better help than wave their hands and say, "Well, maybe I would do this." Because we have to have context. And so you've got to figure it out both ways. And practice. And practice. Because you're your own best advocate. And if you can't do it, then you can't expect anybody else to do it. Or you're going to spend a ton of money for someone to come up to speed to be able to tell you what you should already have hopefully figured out. So here. So why are we focusing on it? I think I've covered most of these points, but they bear repeating. Realistic coverage. You're not patenting a gem clip. You're going to get some smaller derivation thereof. You're not patenting software for a mathematical algorithm for the weather. That's done. But you've got this satellite system, you figured it out. You are not the only guy to get more space in the shower. But you've got your idea. You've carved that niche for you. So you can understand what that niche is going to be. So that when you get results, or you have a conversation, and somebody tells you something, you don't go, "That's not right. You guys are an idiot. I can't believe you didn't do that. This is not my invention." Well, maybe it really is, and you just hadn't thought about it. Okay? Well, you just said help when getting outside a system. If you can give me that nugget, you've saved a half hour, an hour of my time, so we can really talk about the invention. Bruce's time, Gordon's time, even if you remember Dana who came and talked about PR. Because once you understand what the invention is, she can help you. Can you crowdsource it? Is it that right kind of invention? What age demographic are we looking at because of this idea? Maybe maybe you think your embodiment is for the 18 to 25-year-old. But in reality, when you pulled the concept out, it was really for people in their 40s and 50s. That's a completely different demographic to market to. You don't want to have to pay someone else to try and figure that out. It may be better if you figure it out, right? And the funny story about you getting beaten over the head with a frying pan may be great for the PR, right? And she weaves it in at the end. But that's not where you should start, right?
Question, Louis, because you're talking about engaging outside the systems, which always helps, but I think a lot of inventors, they are afraid, once they start telling somebody else about it and they contribute to it, it's not mine anymore. Can you speak to that a little?
Sure. So,
Did everyone hear that, by the way?
No.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
project!
Okay,
Project!
I think a lot of inventors, I know, in one of my early inventions, I felt that when I started to talk to others about it, that wasn't the patent attorney or even the patent attorney, it wasn't mine anymore. So then you start engaging outside resources, and when are you giving away inventorship, or what is their contribution, and how does that affect your original invention?
So if you've come to me with the basic concept, formed, right, bent wire, lateral forces, dependent, I may say, you know what? Maybe it doesn't have to be straight. Maybe I came up with the corrugated idea, right? Does that make the corrugated paperclip really mine? Probably not, right? It's really, you're talking about the fact, if we lay the claim right, it's really talking about the forces involved. Now, if I added something a little bit more sophisticated, maybe I am starting to become more of an inventor than assistance. And it's a fine line to walk, but at the same time, you're going to need help, right? And it may be, if Gordon just picks a color from red to blue, Gordon's not an inventor. But if Gordon finds you a material that you never thought of and changes the nature of the way this thing works, I'm no longer using spring steel, I'm using some piezoelectric material so I can give it a little bit of a shock with this special device and now it'll clip real tight. Well, maybe there's a new invention there, right? So now maybe Gordon needs to be looped into that because he came completely outside the box of what you thought, and maybe that embodiment may belong a little bit to Gordon. But most of us who are professionals try and walk the fine line of what's help and what's new. And personally, that line is blurred to me. Now, there's somebody from the USPTO here, so I can't tell you exactly what I would do. No. You know, I'm not an inventor by trade. So if you come to me with an idea and I give you bells and whistles because I've seen an article about something or I've read something and it helped you a little bit, as long as the basic inventive concept is yours, it's yours. Okay, it's not mine. If we figure out something completely different, then maybe that little specific piece is mine. There are many of, I won't call them horror stories, but there are many stories of a client patents one thing and then you find out that your patent attorney has patented derivations from that. Okay? Because they consider it's not their invention, it's my invention. I thought about it, I didn't give it to the client, it wasn't a gift, and it's mine. I've had partners at my other firms be listed as co-inventors because they figured it out. One partner I used to work for, we used to do sneakers, like saving the world. For cancer, we did sneakers, right? But he helped his client get the LEDs and the little flashers in the heels of those tennis shoes, I guess, or sneakers at the time they were fashionable to do so. So he got named as an inventor because he figured it out. They came to him with an idea, this is what they wanted, he was named as a co-inventor. Okay? It happens. Doesn't happen often, but you have to just, I'll get it in a second. You're going to brainstorm, okay? Pre-patent application, be careful how much storming you do and with who you do it with, and make sure it's under the proper controls like an NDA. After a patent application, you shouldn't be doing that much storming because I always tell my clients your patent application becomes your script. Read from the script. And maybe somebody gives you a great idea, you're sitting in a room and you're having a meeting, somebody triggers a great idea. You don't have to blurt it out, right? You can keep it, think about it, form it, and maybe that becomes a new part of your invention. If you start sitting in a room and talking with people and bouncing ideas back and forth, it's going to be hard to figure out which of you is the inventor. Now, there are some decent tests involved on inventorship, and we do inventorship sort of research, and we ask these kind of questions in a number of different contexts at the professional level. Hopefully, you don't have to run into those kind of problems, but there are ways to figure it out, okay? But the basic rule is that your patent is your script. Your inventive concept is your script. Stick to it. If you want to expand the script because you had a great idea, go back, tune it up, do what we just did, figure out if it sort of sits inside, and now maybe that's your broader, bigger, better invention. We have a question. Rick, I think, right?
So if you go to a professional for some help developing the product or patenting it, and even if they have to be named as a co-inventor, wouldn't there be the assumption that you would get that assigned to you?
With the right documentation in hand, you are absolutely correct. That non-disclosure agreements, the ones that I would write, the basics I would give somebody would say, whatever we talk about is confidential unless you find out about it through the public domain, and any work you do for me is mine, right? And that's a very broad concept. But at the end of the day, you can say, yes, you may be an inventor, but you wouldn't have invented anything if I didn't come to you. So we need to have a discussion about what that means, and what that means in the context of my invention. It's very hard to tell somebody who does this for a living that any invention you ever have, ever, involving this technology will always be mine. It's a tad draconian, right? And at the flip side is people are like, well, you know, it may be because I gave you the idea and then you went home and you slept on it, and that's where patent attorneys make our money, right? We have to have a fight somewhere, and sometimes that's one of them. But with the right paper involved, the right professionals involved, you don't see these every day in the newspaper, and there's a reason for that, because they typically aren't happening with that kind of frequency.
So a well-written NDA should save you from that.
We'll start to protect you from that.
Start to protect.
Right? Because I tell people, an NDA is only as good, just like a contract, as the parties who sign it. If you're getting into somebody who you have to count your fingers after you shake their hand, no NDA will help you. Okay? No NDA in the world will help you. So you have to start at that point, right? You could come to me, I don't need a piece of paper between us for us to have a professional relationship. That's where I make my money. If I sour that milk, I've killed the money tree, right? So I'm not gonna do that. There are other people who may, there are other people who may not. So you have to start with who's sitting across the table from you, and then put paper in place so everybody understands their rights, and everybody understands what's expected.
Are there instances where you can then have somebody be co-inventor but not have to pay for that then?
Well, it should be part of the services, right? When they sign the NDA, that's part of the service agreement. I'm gonna hire you. I'll tell you about a patent application that I wrote for a very large medical company. And it was on a set of sutures and retractors. And I turned a 2-page invention disclosure into like 80 pages. And because it was rattling off the top of my head, but it was all the basic concept. So they got that from me, right? They got the extra 20 pages, 30 pages, 40 pages of the concept that came out of my head. But it was the same basic idea. You know, it was a set of clamps. What happens is when you start clamping things off, what you clamp starts to die because you're holding onto that skin or that muscle so tight, you're restricting blood flow. So there was a system that you didn't have to grab onto it so tight, but you still got the same amount of force. Pretty neat invention if you ask me, especially since I helped with it. But that's the relationship I have with the client. The client expects me to work with them to help them flush out the invention. So was it my invention? No. I didn't wake up one morning and say, hey, there's a great idea for surgical retractors because this is the problem. I've never cut somebody open in my life with a scalpel, right? But when they come to you and they give you the invention, you talk about it, you get back and forth and you start on a roll. Oh, maybe you could do it this way. You could do it this way. What about this? What about that? What if there's air? What if there's water? What if it fluctuates? A whole bunch of different scenarios can go into that. So there's some play in there. It's a gray area. Sorry to break it to everyone.
Could I ask you about the dialogue that goes on between the inventor and the patent attorney? And when you're trying to establish claims, is it reasonable to expect that you can have a give and take on a number of occasions? In other words, what is considered reasonable professional practice? I know that's sort of a big question, but
Okay, hold on.
it comes up a lot, though.
Let's see if I get a call early and maybe I'll answer both at the same time.
How much does the attorney own?
I own nothing.
Why not? I mean, if you're contributing to the idea. Is that a variant of what you're saying?
No, I know what Gordon's asking.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Um,
So Louis, I guess let me ask it another way, and I think we'll keep that.
Keep spinning around. Keep asking questions. Okay.
What is the professional service, and when does it become inventorship?
Man.
And we don't mean to put you on the spot,
No,
but
okay.
I think it's an important thing for inventors to understand.
Dave, nod your head if I get off track, all right? The basics, if you're asking me to do a basic service, Lou, I've got a provisional. At best, I want you to read it. Tell me if I've got the right flow and ebb to it. I'll do that for you. And you're probably not going to get a lot of my input. Okay? The flip side is we have clients that hand me a sheet of paper with a drawing at best and say, this is my idea. I'll talk to you on the phone for half an hour. I'll talk to you on the phone for an hour. We can talk about it. Have at it. And that turns into 20, 30 pages sometimes, right? But the have at it's the important part, right? You give me the piece of paper, I read about the invention. Or in this scenario, you give me the inventive concept, right? We sit down and we spend a little bit more than 60 seconds, but we spend some quality time together. And you tell me about the concept, and then you get narrower and you tell me about the embodiment that you invented in your basement with all the different wires. I've had people come in with all this stuff bent out of shape and cut out of nylon and blowtorched out of steel and what have you. And you drop it on my desk. And I pick it up and I play with it. And we have a conversation about it, right? At the very far end, for the clients that have unlimited R&D budget, that thing might sit on my desk for a week. And when I'm bored, I'll pick it up and I'll take it apart and I'll put it back together and I'll try to get my head around everything we can do about that. Most of you don't have large multinational corporation budgets for me to do that. So what typically happens is you come in, now this is the middle of the road, you'll come in, you'll give me your idea, we'll bounce back and forth. I'll think I have my hands around it. And I'll say, all right, let me get you something. And I'll draft out part of it. I'll write it out, I'll hand sketch some stuff. My apologies to anybody who's ever received one of my hand sketches. Patrick. And you'll get it, you'll read through it, and hopefully I've got it, right? If I've done my job right, I've got the core in there and the kernel. And you may say, well, you know, there's a little bit of change here, there's a little bit of change there. We can work our way then toward a set of claims, talk about what that means, get them written out, have you sort of look at them and nod at them, and away it goes. You know, the far end of that is I've had clients that have come to me with this, what they think was a great idea, and I write it out, and they start inventing on the fly. And it turns out that, you know, they've now paid for a Lexus. And because they've spent all this time working with me as a sounding board to get the invention out of them. That's why I say you gotta go through these exercises. You don't want me at $700 an hour to be your sounding board. I'm a great sounding board, don't get me wrong, but $700 an hour, you're not paying. You don't want to pay for it. You can do it yourself. You can sound off against other people. You can sound off against yourself, just sort of thinking about it, spending some quality time with no distractions and a piece of paper, sort of jotting these things out. So that when you come to me, I'm not spending hours back and forthing with you. I'm not spending your money and your time trying to draw the invention out of you.
When you were,
Okay?
I had a question also. I think that, and it's for you, Lewis, as well as our patent office guest, is that I heard it said that actually the way, obviously, the way the patent office is set up, the inventor and the patent examiner, it is not an adversarial system.
You're cheating. I got that slide coming.
Oh, I'm sorry. And they're allowed to suggest a claim.
Yeah, no, I'm getting
Oh,
it.
I'm sorry. Okay,
Come
I was
on.
wondering, and they don't have inventorship.
No.
They do that?
Not at all.
Okay.
Not at all.
Sorry.
Thanks, man. But there you go. So I can actually sit down. Okay. So I wonder if that's actually the next slide. I would laugh if it was. No, it's the one after. But any more questions before I keep moving?
Would it be a good idea for an inventor to have an NDA during an initial consultation with a patent attorney? Is that typically done, or is
No.
there typically a
No.
privilege
There is privilege.
considered to be
So
given?
that's a good question. When you talk to an attorney, okay, we are not client and attorney when you walk in the door. Okay, no money has changed hands, no retainer letters have changed hands, but the privilege extends to the fact that you and I are allowed to have a conversation so I can understand the scope of the representation. So you can come to me and I ask clients, you know, what's going on, what's the invention, give me a general overview. Okay, good, let me see if, who are the people you need to talk about, and okay, I can represent you, I can't represent you, I have to do a conflict check to see if I can. A perfect one, I'll tell the story about Bruce. Bruce brought some people into the office, he invited me over to talk to them. They had this invention, they opened up and they said, our invention is X. And I said, I'll see you later, because I've got somebody doing that. And I walked out of the room. Because the instant he told me what the invention was, I knew I couldn't represent him. So, but we have to be able to have a conversation, right? They didn't give me the secret sauce. They gave me enough so we could work through it. We didn't need an NDA. Right? And enough so I could tell them, yes, I can represent you, no, I can't. Or I have a conflict, or I don't have a conflict.
So if you give them the details, the diagram, the text, the secret sauce, then you need an NDA?
No, well, hopefully you're giving me the secret sauce after we've been retained, right? So you go to your attorney, you say, hey, I've got this great idea for a paperclip. I say, great, I don't represent any wire bending manufacturers. We can do this for you. You're happy, you trust me, let's be client attorney. Fine, I'll send you a retainer letter that spells out all of your rights. Different firms have different retainer letters, but they basically say, I'm your attorney, it's attorney-client privilege, you're my client, you agree to certain things, which is, you know, arbitration and some other terms. And you can have your attorney explain your retainer letter to you, so have that if there's any confusion, but it's generally written somewhat clearly. You sign that, I sign that, we're married, okay? Kiss the bride. And now we can start talking secret sauce, because now we're attorney and client, I'm your agent, I'm underprivileged, it's all good, okay? Those privileges don't extend to Gordon and Bruce, of course, but professionally they sort of do, right? You go to Bruce and Bruce tells you, okay, I can help you out. You have a conversation, same thing with Gordon, I can help you out. Put an NDA in place, you can move forward. Okay? It's good to have one in your back pocket if you're gonna start talking to people. Or, see your attorney first, get a patent application, and your patent application is the best NDA you can have. Because now, those are your rights, that's your script, stick to it. Don't deviate from it. And since you've got patent pending, you know, you've got some protections now. May not be that you get a patent at the end of the day, but it's got some teeth to it. More because you can stop somebody on the patent side than fighting them on the contract side, which is the NDA side. Any more questions? We can go to the next slide. Okay. So now, we're going to go back to the idea of the inventive concept, because using that is what you're going to need to do this for. So now if I give you tips on how to write your own provisional patent, or how to write a patent, or how to start the concept, well, you can do a search. You can go to Google Patents. They have a whole patent website that digitizes all these US and European patents. You can do a natural word search there. The USPTO.gov has a search site. There's a little bit more sophistication to that. You can narrow where you search and how you search. But until you understand your concept, you're not going to be able to do a really good search, right? Because if you're searching for corrugated and eye and wire, you may be missing the boat, right? You want to look for fasteners. You want to look for, dependent forces. You want to look for different words than corrugated and eye, right? So that's why you have to sort of understand the concept so you can search it.
So you, since you're a first-time inventor, you've done all that, would you still suggest getting a professional search done? If you're in the provisional patent stage?
Probably not. Okay. I have clients that, and these are of every size, that by default do a search. They won't even talk to me until they've done a search, and then they come talk to me. I've got other clients that have said, I'm willing to roll the dice. I've been in the business, we can go through it. Nothing harms you from doing your own informal search, especially before you want to go talk to people, to have an idea. Because it's hard for you, let me center myself so I'll answer the question directly. It's hard to center yourself and to scratch those things off that are already known if you don't know what's already known. Okay? It may be that you're inventing broad enough so you can say, all right, I know that there's wire, I know that there's paper clips, I know that they're bent. But it may be what you think may be your secret sauce, may not necessarily be. Or your secret sauce may be a little smaller than you think it is. No one's ever done this. Oh, there's a couple over here on this thing, there's a couple over here on this thing. And so instead of being this big, maybe it's this big. It's this big.
If I may, just to add to that though, and just because there is prior art, it might not be actually active patents. There could be prior art that is expired, and your implementation of the concept today may be more appropriate than somebody inventing it 50 years ago. So so you shouldn't just assume because you see prior art, you can't do it. You have to put it into context.
So here's another good client story.
Thank you.
Client comes to me and they want to invent a shock collar dog leash. It's a great idea. The guy doesn't actually tasers. That's what his main line of work. He shocked human beings already. But he said, yeah, maybe I'll do it for, you're a 90-pound woman, you've got this Great Dane, you're trying to walk it, the Great Dane's running, you don't need to be taking a sled ride. So I've never seen one before. He's like, I've never seen one before, but I want you to do a search anyway. So lo and behold, now of course, this is going to be small, plastic, handheld, 9-volt battery, that's it. Lo and behold, 1920, some guy's got the exact invention, except you've got to carry around essentially a car battery with you. I mean, you've got the dog, you got the leash, it's all hardwired, it's like you jump in a Chevy. But he had it. The only difference was the fact that the batteries were smaller, they carried more juice in the 1990s than they did in the 1890s. So, but the concept was there. That doesn't mean he can't sell it, right? That claim, that patent is dead and gone. It's already expired. So he made it, he sold it, he just couldn't patent it the way he wanted to. So, to Bruce's point, it may have been done, it may be out there, but that doesn't mean you can't get to market with the newest turn of it, the newest way to look at it. And trust me, nobody bought the one with the carbon, right? They wanted the nice, small, little plastic one with a 9-volt battery, and all was good. So yes, there's gonna be prior art, there sort of always is. The USPTO lady is smiling because she knows, that's my next slide actually, I won't even jump to that one. So once you've sort of done the search, and you've got your head around your concept, start writing. No sin in it. You don't have to give me a half a page. You can give me 5 pages. You can come to me with 65 pages, which some people have. You can never have too much, because understanding the process from your side shouldn't have a page constraint. When you come to your attorney, we write patent applications. Understand that what you've written and what I've written, once it's filed with the patent office, it's generally filed in stone. So if we haven't said it, we're not going to be able to say it again. Or it's going to get a new filing date and get messy, and a whole other ball of wax for another conversation. So another perfect example, have a client, computer invention, and nowhere in the specification did they use the word server. Server. Okay, so I'm trying to claim a networked invention, and there's no server. And the examiner calls me on it. Hey, there's no server. Well, you can't say that. Luckily, we had some other disclosure in there so that I could squeak by. But that was missing because everyone thought, oh, it's a server. You know, we don't have to talk about it, it's a networked invention. If you don't say it, you don't mean it. You can't patent it. Okay, so you don't know what you're going to need. So why did my patent attorney write 5 pages on what a smartphone is? Well, because I don't know what the examiner's going to whittle me down on. I don't, when I and the examiner are going at it, I don't know what I need to focus on. So I need some breadth, I need some coverage. And you're going to want it because, hey, there's a bunch of telephone inventions with the old modems, remember the ones that squeaked and squealed, that were applicable to the internet because they had the right disclosure. And other guys, they couldn't get on that money train because they were talking too much about telephones and copper wire and bit transfers and all the stuff that you don't want to be talking about. They didn't be more general, okay? They weren't general enough. They weren't just talking about networked connections between 2 computers, okay? I don't care if it runs with Java, if it runs on an iPhone, if it runs on an Android phone, I don't care. The patent office, to a certain extent, doesn't care, okay? I want to know what it does. We'll figure out how to write it in Cobalt, or write it in C, or write it in Java, or whatever language you need to write it in. Later, that's implementation. Tell me what the idea is. Be more general, okay? At the same time, I need you to be more specific. Because at the end of the day, it may be the fact that the only thing I can get you is that corrugated arm with the eye. That may be it. Unfortunately, that may be the meets and bounds of what we can get. But if you haven't talked about it, I can't get it for you. And that may be what you sell. Because maybe that corrugated arm with the eye is the one that you've got now, you're bending and you're putting on the market. So I can at least maybe get you your commercial product. We still need to talk about the nuts and the bolts. We still need to talk about the devil in the details. But that's not the only thing you should say. So you can't be all general, you can't be all specific, you gotta be both. More the merrier. Let's talk about it. Let's have some discourse on it in the document. Because the more you give me, the more I can work with. I can't give you the claim you want, or hopefully should get, if it's not said. And so that leads us to the drawings. Drawings don't have dimensions, okay? They shouldn't. Clients want to give me blueprints. They're great. I don't want them for the drawings inside the patent office. Because like we talked about with the Kana clip, with that other paper clip, maybe that clip, 27 times its normal size, will fasten together 2 shipping containers. Okay? You don't know. But if you talk about, oh, well, it's got to be, 1/2 inch here and it's got to use 1/4 inch wire. you're out of the box, right? It's not happening.
Do you write two versions? Do you write a scaled down version and a more?
Nope, it's all in the same document. It's all in the same document. I don't know where my fight's gonna be when the patent office comes knocking. So I need a little bit of both. I need the broad one. The broad one would be like with the first claim without where it said middle, or without where it said serpentine, or out where it said I. And then I would write smaller claims to that. So that I've got a whole range. Think about an inverted pyramid, right? My first broadest independent claim should be the broadest idea of my inventive concept. The tip of that pyramid should be the narrowest, probably your commercial embodiment that's going out the door.
So ultimately, don't we put a lot of sizes and measurements on it? Because I've seen some patents that like have different like dimensions on it. I was like, that's easy to get around because all you gotta do is change that and change the patent.
Well, we don't put them in the claims. We should, in the specification, in the broad description of the invention, talk about sizes and ranges of sizes, right? Because if I have to get there, maybe that's the only thing I can do, right? I've got clients with inventions where it's a temperature range, and that's it. I mean, they're patenting, and I said, hopefully that's the secret sauce to you guys, right? That you've got. I mean, because we talk about it can be, hot. Oh, what the heck does that mean? What's hot, right? But, oh, hold on, it's got to be 600 degrees Fahrenheit and 900 degrees Fahrenheit. When you hit that sweet spot, the magic happens. Yeah, it'll happen at 500. Yeah, it'll happen at 1,000. But if you can get it between 6 and 9, we're golden. And maybe that's all I can get you. But if you haven't talked about it, I can't even write that. Okay? If you just tell me it's got to be hot, and it's got to be less than 1,000 degrees, well, that's all I can put in the claim. And maybe there's somebody at 800. Maybe there's somebody in at 950, right? You don't want 950, really. You'd be happy with 900 if we have to have this fight with the patent office. So let's think about that. Let's get those ranges in there. Let's get those temperatures. Let's get some of those sizes in there so we have a frame of reference. That's not necessarily what you're going to end up in a claim with. That's not going to be what you're going to be able to enforce against others. But it may be that that's at the end of the day all we can get you. So I need to have something in there. And hopefully it's not so narrow that it's got to be, 1/8-inch wire, right? But maybe you don't care. Maybe because all paper clips are 1/8-inch wire. And so, okay, so you're not going to get the shipping container embodiment, but you'll get the paper clip, right? So that's how it can roll. So,
And just as a caveat, and I think I've seen patents with clients coming to me saying, I have this patent, and I don't want to bad talk a profession, but there are a lot of unscrupulous patent attorneys and who say, I can get you a patent. And by writing something very specifically, I mean, they can't guarantee it, but there are ways to assure more confidently of getting a patent. Lewis is going through the details of what a good patent attorney should do. Dave is a good patent attorney. They understand how to navigate the waters to get that broad coverage. But there are attorneys who I've seen who will just, and they're, I don't know why, I just keep seeing them from Kansas. But
poor Dorothy can't get a patent attorney.
But there are people that can write patents for you to get you something patented, so you can have a certificate.
To Bruce's point, Dave and I will both tell you, I can get you a patent on almost anything. Whether or not that it's worth the paper it's written on is a completely different conversation, right? If you want to patent something pretty to hang up on the wall, I could probably write you a claim narrow enough that we can get it to the patent office. And nobody in their right mind would ever make it. Nobody in their right mind would ever buy it, but I can get you one, right? So you need to find the happy medium between a great paper invention that no one's going to make, no one's going to buy, no one's going to infringe, and trying to capture the moon, and maybe you can get it, maybe you can't. But part of that is cost, part of that is time, and part of that is the reality of what art group you're in. Okay? One of my clients invented the MRI. Needless to say, he had a pretty open field when we started. Nowadays, you got to beat people off with a stick to try and get something in that field, right? But the very first MRI ever taken is of his chest. So that's a pretty broad invention. We were able to walk in. There's a lot of stuff we could do. Now, not so much. So you gotta know where you are, you gotta know what it is. If you're doing golf clubs, let me tell you something. There are more golf club patents than you can beat off with a two iron. So, they're there. So you've gotta figure out what little niche you're looking for. You're not gonna get a broad patent on golf clubs or golf technology. If you're talking about other things, we can talk about breadth and scope. And part of that comes from searching, writing, and understanding the concept so we can have a discussion about what's really going on with the invention. Now I'll move to the types of patents. Real quick, people have covered that before. Provisionals. Sort of placeholders. They only last a year. They don't have claims. They're not examined. There's a very low fee. The way we sometimes put it, the PTO will take a cocktail napkin, if necessary, with your invention on it. Yes, you actually have. I've seen some. So you can pretty much write what you want to write and get it out. But remember, for you for that to have some meat to it, some bones to it, it should be written with all the other concepts in mind. It should be written with the fact that there should be very little work to turn that into a utility, which is what happens after a provisional after that year. There should be very little work involved. Because everything should be there. Because you should have hopefully written out your inventive concept. You should have gotten the kernel down. You should have gotten very general. So you've talked about all the different things you might be able to do with this thing. You should have gotten very specific. You should have been talking about temperatures and dimensions, at least in some broad senses. And so if you've done it yourself, and if you've written a page, I will tell you right now you didn't write enough. If you've written 5 pages, you probably didn't write enough. Okay, and I don't care what your invention is. You should double spaced, page and a half, space and a half, have something to say. Okay, if you've read a real patent application, you see how they cross-reference to the drawings. You can do hand sketches. Okay, but go through the rigor. Go through pump A, gasket 5, memory 12, processor 15, shower curtain S, whatever it is. If you've done the discipline, you've done part of my job for me when we have a conversation later on, or you show it to somebody because you're pitching it, you're selling it. You don't want an NDA. I'm going to put a provisional on file, but I want to sell this to somebody. Hand them the script. Once you've filed it, you got your filing receipt back, you got a number, you can talk about it. And what better way to talk about it than be able to show somebody a pretty drawing, assuming you haven't already built a prototype. Here, look, this is my invention. This is what we're talking about.
Just see so many places where they, online, where they try to help you write your own provisional. What am I losing out when I do it by myself?
Okay, I will repeat the question. There are places online that will try to help you write your own provisional. And the question is what am I missing? Professional help to a certain extent, right? Whatever you do it day in and day out, and I'm sure you're very good at it, because you do it day in and day out. Okay? I could not do what you do. You could have a higher IQ than me. You could have gone to a better school than me. But that doesn't make me, as a patent attorney, do what you do. Or you to think you can do what I do, right? I do it every day. There's magic words sometimes in the field. I'm not saying that you won't do a phenomenal job. Okay? I'm not saying that you can't write a provisional that I would pick up and say, wow, there's really not much more I could do to this thing. I've seen some of those. Okay? I've gone, I can help you with a couple of words, I can help you with some grammar, I can help you with some magic phraseology, I can give you some suggestions about maybe what you should look about for the drawings and how these things should feel. The concept is time and money.
But the provisionals don't require drawings, do they?
They don't require anything.
Okay.
But if you can't support what you want to say a year from now, the provisional isn't worth the paper it's written on. That's the point. Everything goes back to what you've disclosed. So in the provisional, even though it doesn't have to have drawings, doesn't have to have claims, it's not examined, if you haven't talked about it in the provisional, you didn't invent it then. You invented it when you filed your utility a year later. And then you can get into trouble, because maybe in that year, somebody's filed in between. Sort of getting with a little bit more into the details, but that's what can happen. There can be somebody who slides it in between. if you haven't talked about it. So that's why I want to explain this, like, sit down, go through it. If you can't spend your money on me, spend your time on you.
Can you repeat that again? You said, if she doesn't write everything at provisional, someone can slide in?
Yes. So, here you go.
Break that down a little bit.
You've invented A and B in a combination, whatever that combination is, right? I've invented telling the weather using a satellite and radio. That's what I write, okay? And that's all I'm talking about.
And you're an inventor.
And I'm the inventor, and I file a provisional, and that's what I write, okay? Somewhere in that year, I figure out that I need a ground station. Okay, I need something on the ground for me to triangulate off of, so that there's 3 points. But I didn't talk about it. So now, it's a year later, we're ready to convert, and that subject matter about weaving in the ground station, not there. Okay, so we're gonna file it, and now we'll get the new date. The date we filed talking about the ground station. So the stuff in between, if somebody figured out the whole thing, the satellite, the radio beam, and the ground station, you may be at a loss, even though you had a provisional. Because you didn't sit down and think about the whole ball of wax.
And because I didn't put the ground station in my provisional.
You didn't invent it. You didn't invent that concept.
Louis,
You didn't get it in.
So there's this perception that provisionals aren't examined, so how does anyone know?
Yeah.
Because when it's time, and when I mean time, it can be in 2 senses. One, when your actual patent is examined. I know one examiner who's done this, but he's a good friend of mine, who actually went into the provisional application, said you tried to lay claim to something that you didn't possess. You didn't possess it at the time. You got the wrong date. We have to talk about different filing dates. We have to change the art. I have to do a different search. It was a disaster. Or, what really happens is most examiners don't look back. They presume you've got it all there. And now the real thing happens. You want to get money. You are going to enforce this patent. You are going to sell it to a troll. And they're going to enforce it against all those people in the market who are doing satellite oculation to capture the weather. Okay? And they look, and the patent attorney like me looks through, sees your claims, then notices, oh, hold on, it's not the provisional.
So the provisional that this lady keeps looking at, the
Right.
provisional doesn't get thrown away.
The provisional doesn't get thrown
It's
away.
still a formal piece of paper.
It's still there. It's still part of your record.
After the year.
After the year, it's still there. It's still part of your patent application. It does not go away. It is the first line in the sand of your rights. And if you want to use that date, you want to get that protection, you better make sure the provisional says it. If it doesn't, you've missed the opportunity.
There's a lot of misinformation out there about what happens to the provisional.
Okay, so let's step back and talk about what happens to a provisional. So, what's the point of a provisional? They started for really the biomedical community, the guys who push this stuff. Because imagine, I'll tell you the magic story of Viagra, because it's a great story and everybody knows what the drug does. It did not start as an erectile dysfunction drug, okay? It was actually blood pressure medication, except they noticed when all their patients came in after on the phase 3 trials, part of them arrived a half minute before the rest of them. And they said, oh, we may have something here, because all these men, because who gets heart attacks, right? It's men. All these men are walking in the door, and they all are, well, some of them are complaining and some of them are praising the drug. They've all got this physical manifestation. Whew, it's time for us to file a patent application on this. So the drug was known. They had filed a patent application on the blood pressure medication. But now we got a new use. So they went in and they filed it. They had no idea how it worked. All they knew is what it did. So they spent that year, now that they've got a patent application, they got a provisional on file, they're trying to stop other people from using that compound for that purpose. And they went through and they started to do the test to figure how long does it last. You know, is it a 4-day, 4-week, 4-hour? How much do you need to take, right? What's the pathway? What's the mechanism that's making it work? So we can write a more detailed patent application. But at first tear and first blush, they wanted to make sure that they protected the basic concept. You take this drug, You get great blood pressure numbers, and you get great side effects. Talk about a win-win drug. It only made them about $1 million a day, that drug. So that's what I'm talking about. It's meant so you can get your concept down early. Inventors picked it up, especially small inventors, picked it up because it's an inexpensive way to get your idea on file. Forget about the old, oh, we can mail this to ourselves, right? We've all heard that myth. That is the most urgent of myths to the patent world. Don't be mailing things to yourselves, especially now. File provisional. But make sure, you have to understand, it's 1 year. So you better be prepared to go out and pitch it, go out and sell it, go out and get your funding, because at the end of that year, someone's going to come to you with a much larger legal bill and say, you want to convert this or not? Now you've got to, now from what's a $100 filing fee turns into a $1,000 filing fee. And do I want to go overseas and file a foreign patent application, which will cost me thousands more? We'll talk about that too. Every patent should be taken seriously, provisional or otherwise. If you don't, you're doing yourself a disservice. If it's not there, if you haven't thought about it, if you just sort of tossed it in, you're not getting everything you can out of it.
I have a few questions. One with the provisional. If you go ahead and do a provisional patent first, not that you have to, and I'm trying to get an example here. Say it's like eyelets on a shoe. You say, anywhere from 1 to 10 eyelets on a shoe, but you start selling them in 6. Somebody else makes 5 and tries to get a patent on 5. They, in theory, can't get the patent on 5 eyelets because you already covered that in your provisional, provided you file within the year, correct? Or any eyelet for that matter.
Well, you now, since we'll use your example, and we'll have the rubber meet the road. If I said a plurality of eyelets, or more than 1, I can get anybody making 2 to 2,000. Okay? If for some reason I wrote, because I hadn't thought through it, and I said 6 eyelets.
Yeah.
And that's all I can lay claim to, 6 eyelets. What's 5 eyelets? What's 7 eyelets? That's arguments for patent attorneys that they can spend thousands of dollars on, of your money or someone else's. But why do you want to be in that position? Right?
No, that's true.
But, so I mean, that's what this sort of lecture is all about. You don't be in that position. Don't be in the position where you've got to call somebody up and say, I said 6, and somebody's making 5, and I'm mad because my product is better, but they're taking my shelf space. Why is this happening to me? Oh, woe is me. Well, because you should have used the word plurality, or whatever. That's why you got to think about it. You got to understand that 5 eyelets on your shoe will probably, I don't have eyelets as I'm pointing at shoes, right? 5 eyelets may work just as well. May not be as great as 6, but 5 eyelets may work just as well. So why are you limiting yourself to 6? Just because that's what you sell, that's fine. But that doesn't mean what we have to try and patent or try and protect.
So, for the purpose of the provisional patent, what's the downside of being insanely general?
There is none.
So, that's the strategy with a provisional patent.
What is the downside of being extremely general in a provisional? None, as long as you're also extremely specific. Because I'm going to have to marry it back up. I'm going to have to, there's going to be a middle ground, right? So if you want to go all the way out to the generality, fine. Right. But if I don't have the other touchstone on the other side, which is the specificity, I can't get you something in between. And that's really where your invention's probably going to lie.
But I mean, all your examples of a provisional patent screwing things up later had to do with being too specific.
Right. So, but you want to be, you're absolutely right, and the answer is, there's no danger in going too general, even in your regular patent application, as long as we have touchstones that go back with specificity, so we can gradiate the breadth of the invention. One more.
Provided you have that provisional patent, and 2 days later, and you're like, you know what, I forgot to add this. You can always update it. I think you were saying that before, correct?
No, you've got to file another provisional.
So that would be a second provisional, and then, okay, what about if it's basically the same idea, it's just with an additional claim to it? Now, do you have a year from that filing date, or do you have still a year from the first filing date of the first one?
You're going to probably use the first one. Another example. Man, I got a lot of these. Have a client, They came to me, they invented this concept, we filed a provisional patent application. 2 months later, they figured out it needed ribs in it for structural support. 2 months later, they figured out they didn't need to do it with the ribs. So we filed another provisional. 2 months after that, they figured out how to do it a different way. Filed another provisional after that. We filed 4 provisionals in the same year. We converted them all on the first date, because the basic concept was sitting in the first application that covered it all. The other ones were just refinements as we went along. So we converted everything to utility on the earliest date. So let's make the imaginary date of January 2, and then we filed one on March 2, we filed one on July 2, and we filed one on November 2. They all turned around on Jan 2 the year after.
So even though you have already a provisional patent, you can make a provisional patent about that provisional patent, isn't that the whole point? That
But
you
they're not related. The
they're just
utility,
extra-
they're just milestones. You've just set new milestones in the sand, right? So that at the end of the day, you can collapse them all on top of each other and try and get your earliest
As
date.
long as it's the same inventor? What if it's different inventors then? If it's your provisional patent, I am just, you did then do that, or is it then?
Are you related in fact? Like, are we related? We're working in the same lab, or are we just complete random people?
Yeah, for instance, because I'm having issues with it, if the whole idea of a provisional patent is that you can't use that invention, right? And if you're having additions to that invention, how can you use that invention on your new provisional patent if that one is, if you can't use it? Does that make sense or no?
The whole use thing's losing me.
Okay.
Maybe we could take that at the
We'll
end.
take
Yeah.
that at the end. So let's go through the last one, which is everyone's thinking about, oh, we've got these great ideas, but it's all out there. There's this, there's that, there are other things. There may be a design patent. Design is sort of the look and feel. Okay. Sometimes these patents get short shrift because they're easy to write, they're only on what you see, and sometimes unscrupulous members of my profession will foist one of those onto you and maybe you don't really know. The flip side is that if anybody heard about Apple winning about $900 million from Samsung, half of those patents were design patents. So they have teeth if done correctly, if you understand what should be in them and you take them seriously. Because it just may be, it's the way it looks. Another example, I had a client that made brake discs, okay? And they have cuts in them usually to help vent some of the heat, right? My client figured out different way of cutting it, different shape, worked phenomenally, got much better heat loss, cooled the brakes faster than most normal. But we all agreed that trying to get a patent on that cut was going to be an uphill battle. So we filed a design application, and we were able to confound their enemies for 17 years. So, used properly, they are a tool, and a strong tool. But you have to know why you're using them, how to use them, and what you're going to go after.
So say a person thinking of like an ice pack for a big toe, would that be considered utility or design? Because ice packs have been made, different shapes and so forth.
Well, an ice pack for a big toe is likely going to be a design application unless there's something in there that makes it completely different that nobody else has thought about from a sock. Or even those skeletal socks now, those shoes that look like socks that got the toes cut out in them. So how do you know? We would have to sit, we'd have to talk, we'd have to look at prior art, we'd have to understand what's going on. You just can't say, well, is it a design or utility? I don't know. Did you invent a different cooling gel to sit inside the pack? Or is it just the shape?
Just a shape.
Then it's probably a design.
It's probably cheaper.
Much,
Much.
much.
Okay.
I mean, how do you know that it's exactly like for a toe, because it's like you weren't gonna design it as follows?
And you have pictures.
Yeah,
So you would
like-
put the foot in Phantom. The foot would be there. And I would say a design for an ice pack for a appendage, probably. I don't know if I'd actually use the word toe, but
Should we move along, Louis?
Let's
'Cause I think you
move,
still have
yeah.
a little more to show.
dealing with the USPTO. First and foremost, if you're not hiring an attorney, understand that dates are everything. I live and die by what's due today. What are the deadlines? You miss a deadline, you're done. Firms pay 6, 7, 8 zeros worth of malpractice insurance because we are date dependent. Miss a date, lose an invention. take them seriously. If you're not gonna have professional help guide you through the patent process, if there's a date, read it carefully, see what date it was mailed, see what date you have to reply by. If you miss a date, it's either gonna cost you money or it's gonna cost you your invention. Simple as that. Dates are important. Can I say that again? Dates are important. Okay? You miss a date and all your hard work goes away. Am I wrong? Am I right?
Right.
Yeah. Right there from the patent office. Okay? Don't be discouraged. If you get an office action rejecting your invention, you're like 99% of everybody else in front of the patent office. It has nothing to do with the fact that you're a solo inventor. It has nothing to do with the fact that your invention may or may not be patentable. You're more than likely going to get a first office action. It is a very rare occasion for people who do this every day of their lives with companies who live and die by their patent portfolios. They get rejections. Sorry, but I tell my first year associates, you have to assume the patent office is typically wrong, and we have to fight it, right? And it's not necessarily true. They're very intelligent people. But you are more than likely going to get an office action. So don't be discouraged. Don't be mad at your patent attorney. It happens. It's going to happen. To a certain extent, that's their job. They are the gatekeepers to inventions, right? So they're going to take you to task. They're going to ask you to explain the invention in the detail that they want. Okay? So don't be discouraged. You get one, you get two, you might get 3 or 4. Prosecution for pharmaceutical patents can last 20 years. You wonder where all your money goes? If you're doing it yourself, do not be afraid to call the examiner. And as Patrick says, if you are a pro se inventor, if you're the examiner and you are now no longer at adversarial points, the examiner can help. You can have a conversation with the examiner. The examiner is, under his rule book, allowed to help you and should help you with your claims and understanding your invention and understanding his rejections. He is going to write his rejection letter, called an office action, the same way as he would write it to me. But he can help you more. That's not to say they don't help me, because I call them and I have long conversations with them, and they're very helpful. I say adversarial, but we're sort of both on the same page, the examiner and I. Our job is to figure out the patentability of this invention. I for my client, and them as the gatekeeper. And the way their system works, they really get their points, their quota, they move forward when they allow claims and patents, not to knock it out. So they're doing their job. This is what they should do, because you don't want any kind of weak, fluffy patents floating around. You want them to be right and concise, and you want the metes and bounds right, because even though you may want a broad patent, you don't want your competitor to have it. So you should all have to live by and die by the same rules. So that's what happens, right? So you're going to get an office action. You're going to be taken to task. You're going to have a conversation. But if you're going to call the examiner, be prepared. Don't call like away from the woods, because the patent examiner can only spend so much time with you. He can only hold your hand for so long. The farther along the road you've brought yourself, the farther he can take you past that point. Don't waste your half hour with the examiner getting you someplace where you could have gotten yourself by understanding your invention, back all the way to the beginning, to the core of your invention, to the inventive concept. Understand your invention. Understand how you've written them in the claims. Okay? And then understand what he's cited against you, what we call the prior art, the references. Understand how he's combining them. The biggest set of rejections we usually get are obviousness, meaning there's more than one patent involved. Understand what he's talking about. A lot of examiners can be vague, and a lot of examiners can be run-on, but in there will be some help and some guidance. They usually point you to a figure, they usually give you a chapter and verse, so to speak, in the references to look at, so you can get a touch and a feel for where he's going or she's going with the application. So you can have a conversation, then get on the phone, set up, don't do it on the fly, I would even set up an appointment to have a conversation. I want a half hour of your time, tomorrow, week after, whatever it is. And sit down and understand what you want to say, understand the questions you want to ask, and then be an educated consumer and ask the patent office for the help that they're going to give you. But they'll give it to you. The more you know, the more they can help you. Like anything else. If you go in there completely lost and clueless, they can only get you so far.
Yeah, the reason I brought that point up is that I heard that in fact a patent examiner is also allowed to suggest a claim.
Yes.
And that, we were talking about that.
Right, inventorship.
It doesn't make them a co-inventor.
That's right.
They're allowed to suggest a claim.
I've had patent examiners suggest me claims, and I do this for a living. Because they know I've had guys that know the art for 20 or 30 years.
Excuse me, everyone's complaining this roll right here, so.
Really, I'm boiling.
Thank you.
But I'm song and dancing. So they have the same conversation with me. I'll have examiners call me up, or I'll call them up and be like, all right, let's talk about this. What's your problem? What do you think the issues are? This is how I would suggest to solve the problem. Sometimes they go, yeah, that's a great idea. Other times they say, no, I can find another 12 patents that show that. I just didn't pull them out of my pocket because you haven't talked about it yet. So there's some give and take there, right? But look at your invention, look at the prior art, and try and focus on your invention and try and focus on the difference. And you'll see it, it's there, hopefully.
Louis, can I just add something real quick?
Sure.
So there's two things I wanted to add that we see all the time, and that is pro se applicants will call the examiner the day before their response is due. And then they'll get frustrated with the examiner for not being able to provide them the help that they need. So Louis was talking about the dates. Give yourself a lot of lead time if you're going to want to talk to the examiner. Don't do it the day before your response is due. And the other thing is, according to the manual of patent examining procedure, an examiner is actually required to help write an allowable claim for a pro se applicant. But it might not be the claim that will best suit your business needs. So you just really need to keep that in mind. An examiner is not trained to help find you a claim that will best suit your business needs. They are trained to help you find a claim that is allowable. And they will do that, they're happy to do that. It just might not be what best suits your business needs.
Mindy, thank you, and I apologize I didn't introduce you in the
Yeah,
beginning.
no
So
problem.
could you please, stand up
Oh,
and
of
maybe
course.
tell everyone who you are? And
Yeah, hi, I'm Mindy Bickle. I feel old because I've been in the office for 24 years. You said 50, you've been doing this for 15. So I've been in the office for 24 years, and I am actually stationed this year at Cornell Tech. The patent office has me here so that I can provide help to the community and help entrepreneurs, innovators, inventors like yourselves. And I've already spoken with Bruce. He would like to have me come in talk to you all at some point. I don't think we set it on a date yet.
I think April.
Or we did?
Yeah.
Okay, we set it on a date.
Some of you may have seen Mindy's predecessor,
Predecessor,
Sue Purvis, and Mindy has taken over for her.
Yeah.
And she's provided some great support. Thank you for coming.
So, to Mindy's point, that's what the last one is. Make sure all your inventions are covered, because the examiner may rate you a very nice, very contrite, very narrow claim, but it may not be covering the invention you really want. And maybe there's a way to change it. Maybe there's a way to have a conversation, to have them understand what you're trying to do. But if you don't know, the examiner sure will. The examiner's job is to know what the art says and to apply it to the claims.
Can I just mention one thing? I'm sorry, so we also have an office called, it's the Office of Innovation Development. And I can't remember the phone number off the top of my head, but if you call the general USPTO phone number that's listed on our website and ask for the Office of Innovation Development, their job is to work with inventors and small businesses. So the little guy, little gal, so to speak, but independent inventors who are working on their own applications, or inventors who might hire an attorney but are looking to get themselves as educated as possible so that before they sit down with somebody who costs $700 an hour, they sort of have some common language to start with. So they're a great resource, and I would strongly suggest that you use them. If you are having trouble talking with the examiner and really understanding what the examiner's saying, and you feel like you could use someone who might help you understand that, you can call the Office of Innovation Development too. So they're a really good resource.
Or if they you just hop on that number.
I'm sorry, I
Are they
did.
local? I think you actually meet.
Where are they?
No, they're not local. They're in Alexandria, Virginia. You can talk to them on the phone. I don't know if you can email. We sort of discourage email about specifics about your application because we don't want to put it in the record. But I'm actually local, so I'm the only person you could probably talk to in person in this region, unless you go to Alexandria.
Understood. And out of curiosity, when you did say before, ask the examiner, will they specify as to what part of the claim is infringing on something else? Like you get it back and they say, protected and here's why, or just protected?
Oh, no. We have to be very specific in our office actions to explain our position. So, Louis was saying that, you usually will get a rejection first, and the reason for that is if there's any question in the examiner's mind, they want to make it a record, and they're going to be really clear and specific about where in the reference, a good examiner, maybe there are some examiners that, newer examiners maybe, I don't know, I won't go there. But,
Don't generalize, just.
Yeah, but so examiners will be very specific, they'll point to where in the reference, what they're saying, shows what is in your claim. So in other words, if they're saying this reference reads on your claim, they'll tell you line and column of where that is found and how they're interpreting it to make that so. And then of course there's always room to rebut, and that happens 76% of the time. 14% of applications are allowed on first action. So 76% are not, and there's a lot of back and forth, and it's not the end of the story when you get your rejection.
Do they tell you which ones maybe before the rejection, which other ones they're citing?
You'll get a cover sheet that says which claims are rejected and if there are any claims that are considered allowable at that point in the prosecution. And behind that, you'll get a very detailed narrative. It could be pages and pages long that explain what the basis for every rejection of every claim is.
Oh, so we'll give you references or something.
Maybe no, please, you've got a better explanation than I have. Maybe one will do a lecture on the nuts and bolts of patent office, back and forth. We can do that at another time. I think I've only got a couple of slides left, so let's see. Yes, this is sort of the last one. So foreign filing. The question has come up, and I'll pick on Rick, unfortunately. He had pitching panel. And the first question I asked Rick was, where's your biggest market? And he said, Europe. I said, you have a patent there. He said, ooh, maybe we should talk. Foreign filing is not an easy question. It's not an easy answer. It needs to be discussed. It's expensive. To file overseas, it is an expensive proposition. It is it's an instant expense because the patent office and the U.S. government only tax you on your property of your invention after you get your patent. However, if you go anywhere else, they tax you every year just for having your patent application on file. So it's an expensive undertaking. I'm not saying that it is worth it. I'm not saying it's not worth it. I'm saying that if you think your invention has a very large market, not in the United States, it's a conversation you should have with someone to understand what your rights are over there, to understand how much it's going to cost, and to understand if it's worth it at the end of the day as a business decision that I should spend the kind of money it's going to take for me to get overseas.
When am I going to lose my privileges of filing foreign applications?
When are you going to lose your opportunity, your privileges to make that foreign filing?
1 year from your first filing in the U.S.
Provisional?
Anything, provisional or utility. You file a provisional Jan 2, 2013, you have to go overseas by Jan 2, 2014. End of discussion. You lose it then, you're out. Okay. There's some small sniglets to that, but the basic hard and fast rule is 1 year.
You just can't be selling exclusively.
Right. You can still sell. It's like everything else. You don't even need a U.S. patent to sell, right? But you just don't have the protection. And it may be that the company you want to talk to is a German company. And so they may be interested in selling this thing exclusively in Germany. So maybe it's worth a conversation.
If your major competitor is a European company,
Maybe you want to stop them at home. Okay? Or maybe you say to yourself, you know what? The 200+ million people in the United States is good enough for me. I know I'm not gonna be able to get to Europe anytime soon. Those are not the sort of people who are gonna help me move this invention to commercialization. So is it worth the money to spend? It is such a moving target that you need to know the invention, you need to know the market, you need to know your competitors, and you need to know your business strategy before you can have a meaningful discussion. Because I can easily tell you, you want to make sure you have protection, let's go for it. And I can spend tens of thousands of dollars getting that for you. And at the end of the day, it can bankrupt you, or at the end of the day, it may be a huge value add for the company that ends up acquiring your patent, because that's your end game, that you want somebody to license this patent.
I don't mean
I'm all done, right?
No, well, you had one more, I think, interesting slide, and then maybe we have some.
I have
some more
questions. Oh, you want to do this one?
Yeah, I think, did you want to do this?
We can do this if people are interested, which is, what rights does a patent provide? Now, if people are actually going to play along, I'll keep tally. So let's see by show of hands. When you get a US patent, does that give you a right to use and sell and make and market your claimed invention? Who thinks that's right?
Two people.
How many think it offers you a limited monopoly?
I
No?
don't know what that means.
Patents are good for 20 years. So,
Okay.
okay. Is a patent a property right? The way we transfer.
Some people say yes.
Some people say yes, some people
Yeah.
say no. Okay. Does it give you a right to exclude others from using and selling and making your invention? Okay, we've got some consensus on that one. B, C, and D, which was
Few hands
monopoly,
Property right,
property right,
exclusion.
and exclusion. You get this one wrong, Patrick, I'm gonna shoot you.
You're cheating, Patrick.
All the above? Was it everything up there?
No.
Was it nothing I've said? Hopefully. The answer is B, C, and D. It is a property right, it is a limited monopoly, and it only gives you the right to exclude. Okay, this is the definition actually off the USPTO website. I just took US government out, just put government country. Because this right is the same right you would get in other countries.
What was A that's not part of that? I can't remember.
You have the right to use it. You don't have a right to use your claimed invention. No right whatsoever. You have a right to exclude others, but you don't have a right to do it yourself. Funny, isn't it? But that's the right. So this is the example I just gave somebody.
So can you explain to this?
I am.
I don't understand.
I'm going to
Yeah.
tell you in a second. This is the example I just gave somebody. The new iPhones have a fingerprint reader in them, right? So you sure that there's a patent in that fingerprint reader? Does that give me a right to make the whole phone? But my fingerprint reader only works in an iPhone. Don't I have a right to make the whole phone? Not at all. Because somebody else owns the patent to the phone. I can stop Apple from putting that fingerprint reader in an iPhone, but I don't have a right to make a phone with the fingerprint reader in it. Not at all. Because I only have a right to the fingerprint reader.
Are you
You get that now?
Yeah.
Got it?
Yeah.
So you can't necessarily use it because if it doesn't fall all the way through, like your use could be dependent on something else. and you don't-
Exactly, it's an
Right.
improvement.
Right.
And nobody has thought of that improvement, but if it's an improvement on somebody else's patented product, it doesn't entitle you
To use it. You might
use
have to
it.
license the patented product to then sell your improvement.
So if there was like a patent on the battery for the electric leash, you can't do it because you did the electric leash part, but not the battery, if that.
Right. If that's the one battery you can use, then you might have to pay somebody a royalty to get that battery in your leash. Okay? So that's what I mean by you have the right to exclude, but you don't have the right to practice.
A different technology for reading a fingerprint?
What, to exclude them or to?
Yeah, to,
There may be another technology that'll allow me to read a print on a cell phone. If I don't have it covered in my claim, I can't stop or use it. Or I can do cell phones have been around for a while, so maybe I go and I put my fingerprint reader in one of those old brick phones, right? Because all the patents had expired on the brick phones. So maybe I put my fingerprint reader in a brick phone and I bring the brick phone back because the fingerprint reader is so cool, people will buy a brick phone for it, right? Because the brick phone may be out of patenting now, so I don't have to pay anybody a license for it.
But no, but to that point, not to be absurd, but that brick phone,
Yep.
you might not be able to use today because you're trying to use the 4G LTE
Right.
network, and you have to pay a license fee to tap into that network.
I have one last question about where patent law is going.
Oh, geez.
We just, no, I mean.
Patrick, is that your last question for tonight?
I doubt it.
No, I hope it's useful to everyone, though. I mean, we just had America Invents Act.
Yes.
Implementation began March 2013 or completed
Right,
March
completed
2013. Is there anything else brewing? Is there any, because that was the biggest change in a long time.
Yes. The last thing that's brewing, and it actually
For
affects.
software, isn't it?
Well, there's software stuff, but the stuff that, and they're still debating some of this stuff at the court level and the congressional level. The stuff that's coming down the pike that may hurt the individual inventor is the fact that, for those of you who haven't heard the term, there's a term called patent troll. And these are companies, the troll is the pejorative, right? So the pretty term for it is a non-practicing entity. These are people who own patents and do nothing but own patents, right? They don't make anything, they don't sell anything, and as their detractors will say, they contribute nothing to society. They are scourges and leeches. But sometimes, those are the entities that buy your patents as individual inventors. Because you have a good idea, they see the value in it, and they purchase your patent or patents for a reasonable amount of money so that they can enforce them against the big people and make a ton of money. But getting something's better than nothing. And so these are the type of entities that may go out and buy your patents. The Congress of the United States has made the decision that they think they can legislate to try and slow these patent non-practicing entities down by changing some of the parameters it takes for them to start a lawsuit. They've already done some of that, and they're doing more of it. So the harder it is for a non-practicing entity to make their money, to sue their infringers, to go out into the marketplace and enforce patents that typical people couldn't afford to enforce, will only sort of, to use the monetary analogous term, it's tightening the market. Okay? It's making the market less attractive for them to come to somebody who has a really good idea that may be being infringed by big guys. And you don't have the money or the wherewithal to go through a patent fight, but they do. And they see the value in your patent application to then buy it from you. Okay? That market, if the Congress makes it more difficult for those entities to make their due, to make their money, whether or not you believe that they should be or not, that's a completely different discussion. The fact of the matter is, these non-practicing entities came into effect and they loosened the market for patent trading. They started actually having an open market, open trading. There's actually a company that does, auctions. They auction patent portfolios, okay? Which means there's some liquidity. Again, to go back to a monetary term, there's liquidity in the market for patents. And the US government is making a concerted effort to dry that liquidity up, to tighten the market, and to make it more difficult for these people who typically buy patents from people like you to enforce them. So that's probably the biggest change coming down the pike. We don't know what it'll actually do to the market because a lot of people say that no matter what they legislate, it's not going to be enough. That there are good non-practicing entities, like universities, who don't make or sell anything, they only license. They're the old-fashioned non-practicing entities, who are fighting some of this stuff because they truly do want to be able to enforce their patent portfolios. They're spending tens of thousands of dollars of research dollars to get these patent portfolios, and they should be able to do something with them if they want. It's also drying up their market. So it's not just these bad, horrible trolls. It's also other members of the market who are in that market. So that's probably the biggest thing coming down the pike, is that it may be more difficult for you to move your patent, so to speak, to sell it at the end of the day, because there's somebody out there infringing, but you don't have the wherewithal to sue.
Any other questions?
We all know that Google monitors and sells everything we click on or type into our computers, given the opportunity. And you had mentioned that as a potential for searching well as the USPTO. What's your opinion on the privacy of the USPTO site, the general use of the internet into your searches? Because in some instances, we may end up exposing some of your ideas in the midst of that search.
Well, we'll start with the premise of the cynics of the world, or at least the United States, is that you have no right to privacy. So let's start there. There are people who will tell you that the Constitution of the United States says a lot of things about what you get, and privacy isn't one of them. Though we all believe that there should be some form of privacy, right? The type of search you're doing on Google, whether or not that's letting the cat out of the bag, I don't think so. Or at least, let's put it this way, no one has ever made a colorful claim that said, you've done an initial search and you've let the cat out of the bag doing that. Because what you've searched doesn't necessarily explain your invention. Okay? Because you're sort of describing things in certain ways and you're using certain keywords and you're not really letting the whole thing out. Now, maybe the question better is what if I type my entire inventive concept and do all my work in my Google email and email it to someone? I still don't think you're going to have a tremendous problem because it's sort of been held that what's in an email has some level of privacy to it, meaning there is an expectation that your email is not being read. Okay? That just like the mail, if I mailed it, if you said, you know what, I'm Karen, I'm going to send you a letter. On the off occasion, the U.S. Postal Service has opened letters. Have you let the cat out of the bag? Dave, I think, he's giving me the same look, right? Which is probably not. That fight hasn't been fought. It hasn't been fought in decades. So there's probably a good expectation that it's not. But I do have clients that require everything to be encrypted because they feel otherwise.
And I don't know if there are any web experts here, but there is rumor that if you do a domain name search in GoDaddy or some of the other domain name registrars, if you abandon that search, somebody may say, oh, somebody just did that, and there is supposedly some way to access that database of abandoned searches. And you may go back a day later and find that your domain name isn't available. So you should be selective perhaps as to what you enter into commercial sites.
USPTO is not a commercial site. I use the USPTO all the time in my searching because it's a sophisticated engine. It can be very general, but it can actually get into some granular level of detail that other engines don't give you. But Google, for the people who don't need that level of granularity or don't want to understand that in first blush, go to Google, type it in, do your search. You're going to get so many random hits. Are you searching for banana trees? Or sometimes you could put in, like Orlock, and you will get something that you never expected. And I'll be like, what the? Every so often I'll do a search and something pops up, and I'm like, okay, I guess I got to find out why that showed up because it's completely off the chart. And more than likely, I will be clicking into that one more than some of the other references because I want to find out why I got the weird hit. So if you really want to look at that, Google might get thrown off by the fact that I'm going more into the weird ones.
So with that,
I think we're done now.
Yes.
Unless there's more questions. I had a question.
and I'm sure you'll stick around and answer a few
Yes.
more questions, or are you coming tonight to the Wheel Tapper for a drink?
Yes.
Okay. For those of you, so we go around the corner to the Wheel Tapper, and Louis, thank you.
Well, I seem to have scared half the audience away, and I apologize.
I think it was the cold air.
Okay.
So, thanks again, Louis,
You're welcome.
and you're a great example of why I think everyone comes to listen to us on a monthly basis. And we'll see you all again January 13th, Monday the 3rd. Is it the 13th?
Yeah.
Second Monday of the month. Happy holidays to everyone. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and we'll see you in January.